Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be standing in this red circle. I've seen so many people stand here, but it's so good to be here. When my daughter Blythe was 2.5 years old, doctors came to us and said that she would need an operation on her heart. She had a small hole in one of the walls of her heart and it needed surgery. When the day came for surgery, she was understandably terrified. And as a father, you wanted to do your best to comfort your daughter. So I asked the surgeon, please could I come into the theater with her? And he said, look, we don't normally do that, but we'll make an exception. So I just scrub up and mask up and put on the gown. And he allowed me to actually hold my daughter in my arms as we put the gas mask over her face for her to fall asleep. She fell asleep in my arms, and I handed her over to the surgeon. I left the theater. Operation was a great success. These days, technology is phenomenal. Instead of open heart surgery, it was a catheter that goes up into the vein and pops this very expensive device into her heart, but it was healed. When she came out of theater, I was in the recovery room to greet her and comfort her. Operation was a great success. She was out the next day. 1 month later, we were at my house having a braai, and we standing in the garden outside and in a little circle, some meat cooking on the fire. And Blythe was standing next to me, holding onto my leg, as young girls do sometimes. And one of my friends looked at her and said, Blythe, I believe you were in hospital recently. And she looked up at him with this very cute voice, and she said, yes, my heart was broken, she said. And then she said, but my daddy fixed it. I tell you, I had to leave the gathering and regather my manhood and come back. It was an amazingly emotional moment. But she gave me the most phenomenal gift that day. She gave me the gift of seeing myself through her eyes. And I realized that I did in many ways hold her heart in my hands. And I held the heart of her brother in my hands. And how I pitched up in their lives as a man, as a father, would have a massive impact, a lifelong impact on their lives. And I realized I had tremendous power in their lives and also tremendous sacred responsibility. Now, power has been given a very bad rap over the years, and understandably so. There's a saying, and we all know this is, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. We all buy into that narrative, and understandably, we've seen the abuse of power throughout history. We've seen countries abuse its citizens. We've seen one race group abuse another race group. We've seen men abuse women. We've seen rich people abuse poor. We've seen abuse throughout history. But what that fails to recognize is the many and countless beautiful ways in which power is wielded each and every single day. The father that gets up in the morning and he goes off to work and does whatever he needs to do to provide for the family. The mother who sacrifices career and time to look after a child. The many things that people do every single day using their power for good. Now, power in and of itself is absolutely neutral. Power has no conscience. It has no tendency towards good or evil. It is entirely up to the people holding the power, whether that power is good or bad. Nuclear power has the power to light up a city, to fuel an economy. But it also has the power to destroy that very same city. It depends entirely on who's controlling the button. Economic power can provide housing, education, you name it, but it can also provide the funding for arms and ammunition and war. So power is neutral. Power is also necessary, absolutely necessary. Without electricity, we don't have lights. Just ask Eskom. Without the power to resist evil, evil will prevail. All it takes for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. If the Allied forces hadn't gathered a very powerful force, an army, to resist the forces of Nazi, we'd be living in a very, very different and dark world today. If the activists against apartheid, men and women who fought against it, didn't have the power to stand up against this evil, we might still be living under that regime today. Power is absolutely necessary. Power is also not distributed equally. There's a big debate around this. A lot of people attribute all the evils in the world to the imbalance of power. And yet, if you think about it, imbalance of power is baked into the fabric of the universe. It's also baked into the fabric of society. Last year, I went for surgery on my shoulder, and they dressed me in a very unflattering gown, displaying much more of my anatomy that needed to be displayed. They wheeled me into the theater. And as I was lying there, an anesthetist came and put a needle into my vein, and she asked me to count down from 10. By the time I got to 7, I was gone. She had complete power over my life. She held me between death and life for the duration of that operation. And then the surgeon, who I didn't even see, had a scalpel and all manner of vicious tools that cut into my arm. Had he gone wrong, I could have bled out. They were totally in control. I had no power. They had all the power. That's an imbalance of power. Every time you get into an airplane, your life's in the hands of the pilot, man, and the air traffic controller guiding the plane through, and the mechanic that fixed the plane. If he or she messed up, things are not going to end well. Imbalance of power is baked into the universe. And we cannot heal the ills of society by disempowering and cutting out people's power. Think of a man and a woman who get married. Inevitably, in that relationship, there are power imbalances. The man, 95% of the time, is physically stronger than the woman. The woman might have a high-power job and be earning a lot more money. So there you have physical imbalance of power, you have economic imbalance of power. Not necessarily bad. Of course, bad if they're used and misused. But imagine if we said, we need to fix this issue, and we need to make sure that before a man and a woman get married, we need to talk to them and say, dude, you are not allowed to have any protein for the next 6 months and no exercise. You're going to eat gruel. We want to weaken you. And lady, you have to train hard, pump iron every day, and eat protein shakes every day. So that by the time you get married, there's a bit of an equalization. Imagine we took their pay slips and said, you know what, we need it's a ludicrous concept. Power imbalances are baked into society, and they're not bad. You would not want me piloting the plane that's flying you to your holiday. It might be the very last journey you ever do. You wouldn't want me standing over your unconscious body with a very sharp scalpel wondering where I'm going to make my first incision. You wouldn't want that. You give the power to the people who are able to use it, and it's a beautiful and good thing. I want to propose today that every human being has a sacred responsibility to do two things. Number one, to grow your power, and number two, to use it for good. You see, we can only do good to the extent that we have the power to do good. Every one of us needs to be a force for good, a power for good. And to do that, we need to become more dangerous. I call it being dangerous for good. Never dangerous to each other. Never dangerous to people or society. Dangerous to whatever is a danger to society. Dangerous to racism, to prejudice, to anything, to abuse. We need to be dangerous to that. And to do that, we need to be our very best selves. And how do you become more dangerous? Quite simply, you become the very best version of yourself you can be. Grow yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually, your EQ, your IQ, grow your intellect, grow yourself, because the more you've grown yourself and keep growing, the more powerful you are, the bigger the difference you can make. And how do we make sure we're good? For me, there are two underlying principles. Walk with love and walk in truth. Love always desires the highest good for everybody else. Love is gracious. Love doesn't cancel, it corrects. Love is forgiving, caring. It calls out wrong, but it always seeks to build up. And truth is a beautiful thing. Truth liberates. Truth sets free. We have this very strange narrative at the moment that the narrative of my truth and your truth. There's no such thing as my truth. There's my experience, and that's real and valid. But my truth's only the truth to the extent that it aligns with the facts and reality. You see, truth doesn't care about dogma or politics or ideology. Truth cares about the facts. A friend of mine recently went to Australia, and he booked into a hotel downtown. On the very first night he went on for a walk, he was mugged, mugged in Australia. Now, his experience was Australia is a vicious, violent, dangerous place. That is not the truth. The truth is that Australia is one of the safest places you can tour. So you can see the problem. If you take my experience and make it the truth, it becomes a real issue. So we need to be people who continually grow ourselves to be the most effective, competent, influential person we can possibly be, and we need to live our lives with love, graciousness, and an earnest desire to seek the truth, which has become tricky in a world of post-truth, in a world where a lot of fake news happens. If we become dangerous but good, we learn that we are interconnected in the most beautiful ways. You see, the reality is we need each other. We need each other. I need you. You need me. We all need each other. And we need each other to be the very best that we can possibly be, the most influential, the most dangerous. And we need each other to be people who walk with love and in truth. And the reward is phenomenal. I talked about my daughter earlier, and on the 14th of February this year, she's in New Zealand now, she's 28 years old. I got a text in the morning, and it simply said, "Dear Dad, to my forever Valentine, I love you." And again, the tears flowed. At least this time I wasn't in public. But the reward of taking responsibility, of being dangerous, powerful, influential. You see, the famous Marianne Wilkinson said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, it's that we are powerful beyond measure. He said, we say to ourselves, who am I to be? Fabulous, wonderful, powerful. But who are you not to be? The world needs you to be the best you can possibly be. And the world needs you to do that with love. My challenge to you today is be dangerous, but be good. The wood is phenomenal. We need each other. Thank you so much.